Sometimes you just gotta go Bardown.
Kirill, top titty 2x4 to end the game. That was nice.
Bardown Beauties.
That's the sexy part of the game, is it not? The plays and the goals and the...
Yeah, that's what you guys like. I mean, it is great.
And now, a new episode of Bardown Beauties with Jesse Pierce and Kirsten Kroll. Your nostalgic SotaStick favorites are back, and they are in stock now at SotaStick.com. From the Met Center colored seats, my personal favorite tee, to the getting blown out the Metrodome door, rep the Minnesota sports timeless vibes with a SotaStick hat, hoodie, tee, whatever suits you and their nostalgic vibes. SotaStick has all the best gear in the game. Don't forget to smash Bardown Beauties at checkout for 15% off all your purchases. Again, that's at SotaStick.com. Hello, everybody. What's up? We're back. Bardown Beauties, episode 270. I'm Jesse Pierce, writer for NHL.com. She's Kirsten Kroll, in arena host and hockey extraordinaire. Kirsten, don't worry. We're halfway through the month. How are you holding up, my friend?
Not well. I'm here.
That's good. You're making it through. We got college hockey coming up this weekend as well in St. Paul, but obviously let's start with the Minnesota Wild, Kirsten. I'm not going to lie. Before victory, we're recording this now on a Tuesday, so apologies for the delayed release, but before them getting the 2 points from the Kings on Monday night in St. Paul, I truthfully, Kirsten, started to think that maybe they would not make the playoffs. The way that they'd been playing, those two losses, not good losses. St. Louis, hot and hungry. I was feeling that at time 6 points was going to dissipate very quickly between the Wild, and I had the first kind of like, oh my gosh, they might actually blow this up, and it just might be an extreme problem. I had that feeling. Now I don't have it as strongly now, but it's still there in the back of my head.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Honestly, I think it's going to come down to how it does every single time it seems the Wild put themselves in this position, and down to the last game or two of the season before we officially know.
I mean, and that's the way of the Central Division, right? I'd love to be in the Pacific where the teams suck and just absolutely drop off. Like, that sounds really nice. Minnesota, as of today, currently sitting, was it 9 points? 8 points. 8 points ahead of the St. Louis Blues, still in that wild card spot. Only 4 points back of Colorado. Now, we've talked about it before, Kirsten. I'm set in a wild card spot. I don't want number 3. I don't want, especially to go up against Dallas. I don't want that. I want to stay as a wild card. What say you?
I think I have a different pessimistic perspective. I just hope we make it to the playoffs. I'm not sure we're going to get past the first round regardless of who we play.
You know what? That's true. That being said, do you start to believe that, you know what, maybe it was okay that Bill Guerin continued his belief that Jules Eriksson and Kirill Kaprizov won't be back, and maybe it is okay that he was extra quiet come trade deadline, because clearly this team cannot do anything without Kirill. But even if they were to come back, what's the point? Because they're not built to sustain a long run. Does that at least soften that blow for you at all?
Yes and no. I guess I think I said at the time too, like, I appreciated the emphasis on the future, because we're just not built to be a team this year that's going to make a big run. If you would have asked me at the start of the year, I felt differently. But if you ask me where we sit now, no. I just think there's decisions that have been made that just still don't make sense to me, like in the short term even. But I still appreciate, I guess, the focus longer.
Like what?
Out.
This is a safe space. What decisions are you still pondering and questioning?
Not putting one player on LTIR.
Yeah. See, I was more or less
my
going.
biggest gripe.
My biggest gripe continues to be, and again, I will reiterate, I will beat this down. I was not particularly attached to a Marat Huznidinev. I wasn't particularly attached to a Jakub Lauko. I would, in fact, probably say Jakub Lauko is like a half a player at this point because you weren't going to re-sign him during free agency, and he was hurt a lot. And I don't know that that's going to get better. And Marat was fine, again, as we succumb to. He is your third, fourth line guy with speed. The thing that frustrates me is he had speed. Whereas Justin Barrasso looks like he's stuck in cement, and then he's got brick hands on top of it, and it's just kind of like you're seeing Hoosie out there in Boston just tear it up. Lauko get the time. That one still really is a head scratcher. I'm still waiting to see the fruits of that labor, and I just don't. Again, it's not that I loved these players because they were just your average fourth liners, but at least they had that jolt of energy that the team needs, especially right now, because I don't know about you, Kirsten. I feel like this Minnesota Wild team just looks beat. Like they just look absolutely exhausted. And some guys, it makes sense, right? You've got guys like Brock Faber, who is still averaging 25 minutes a night, but he looks just worn down because he hasn't had that break. And right now, it's a tough time to be a tired team because you're playing every other night. Now they're getting some off time because Hines has kind of taken a step back on practices, which I think makes sense, but this team looks exhausted, so they could use a guy that has a little bit of jolt, a little bit of oomph, a little bit of speed, and those two guys are now playing for the Boston Bruins, who might miss the playoffs, mind you. Now, the Bruins don't look like they're going to make the playoffs, which is kind of comical to me.
Yeah, I don't know. The way Boston was playing, I guess they weren't even on my radar as a team to be on the lookout for, really, to make a push into
fair
postseason.
Fair. I don't know. How do you find that energy right now for this if you're the Minnesota Wild, right? Like, I think obviously a win helps, but the way that they're playing hockey too, the very shut down defense, because they can't generate anything offensively, which is so frustrating to watch, which again, Kirill Kaprizov, for instance, is still leading the team in goals. I don't know if you guys know that. He hasn't played in like 30-some games. He is still leading the team in goals. That's a problem. If you're Kirill, that's a problem. If you're the Wild management team, that is a problem. You cannot have a guy who hasn't played in over a month be your team leading goal scorer. Now, and it's not that Kirill was out here ripping 50 goals before he got hurt. He's 23 goals. That's a little bit concerning. But that being said, you don't have the offensive output because there just seems to be no energy. How do you muster that up? How do you find that if you're a professional athlete to like just be like, we got to get through this. We got to find that energy because again, there's no rest for the weary because as soon as the regular season's done, you're right back into it with the hard hitting playoffs too.
If they find out how to have that energy, I need them to let me know because I also need it at this point. But I don't know. It would just be nice to see you. We saw depth at the start of the season, and now it's like, where did that go? Everyone has drastically fallen off, and I don't know how to make sense of it.
It doesn't, right? Like, and I think, and that's where I go back and forth, back to the question about the trade deadline, because did you see, I let you answer, and I didn't interject with an answer myself yet, because I didn't have one, but it was percolating in the old brain. It makes me wonder if I would have still liked, and I asked for a bottom six. Now, Gus Nyquist, when he came in, I heralded him, right? I was excited. I remember what Gus Nyquist did when he was here, his first go around for the Minnesota Wild. It was great. Now, to be fair, I didn't quite do my due diligence on how Gus Nyquist is in his career right now. Because had I done that, I would have seen that he has only scored one 5-on-5 goal this season. That's not good. Also, he looks like he's kind of done. He's on the tail end of his career. This isn't the Gus Nyquist we saw 2 years ago. I'm not that impressed with the way that he's playing. You can go back to the game the other night that we just watched. Who did they play last night again? Kings. The LA Kings, when he had the opportunity to help spring Zuccarello for a potential 2-on-1. He doesn't. There was a lack of just general on-ice awareness, which was a bit concerning. So I kind of wish Bill Guerin would have gotten something else that would supplement, because again, I don't mean to like beat on Justin Brazeau because he's a younger player. He does have the size, but that ain't doing it for me. Gus Nyquist ain't doing it for me. I think you could have gone out and done at least something else, because you put a Jules Eriksson on an LTIR. I'm not saying sell the farm. I'm not saying ship out prospects or picks, but get something that can create the offense, because Matt Boldy doesn't have it. He hasn't scored a goal in 11 games. Marco Rossi's struggling to find it. Matt Zuccarello, as self-deprecating as he is, talked about that last night post-game, saying, I don't have it. I didn't pass because I wasn't thinking I could even hit somebody's tape. I'm playing so poorly. Like, you need something else, that new breath of air, a new injection. I really could use another bottom six forward.
I don't no notes. Like, I don't know what else to say.
There's nothing else to say at this point, I think, for this team in general, which is hard, right? Like, are you okay with watching them be a more defense heavy team if it means that they're winning? It means it's not the sexy hockey, right? It's not the fun hockey. It's not the spice that Kirill Kaprizov obviously brings, or even that Joel Eriksson Ek brings. What's your preference? Or I think we probably have to accept that that's just the way it's going to be down the stretch, because every team's going to be tightening up. There's not going to be a lot of ice anywhere for anybody, but it's going to be a very kind of shell defense Minnesota Wild team, I think.
I mean, and I'm okay with that. I put more of an emphasis on defense regardless, but right now, if I was in that locker room, I would be like, just make it to the playoffs, like secure your spot in the postseason. Because also it'd be awful to miss the playoffs 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm. Especially, again, after a tremendous start. And thank goodness they had the start that they did, right? Because if they didn't, playoffs it's laughable, right? Like, it wouldn't have been at all a thing, because that first half was everything for Minnesota. Speaking of defense, I do got to give another shout out to our boy Johnny Merrill. I feel like I've been very favorable of him this season. Again, I've always been favorable of him as a person, but he makes a beautiful save to help out Gus the other night. But not only that, I've really noticed John Merrill this year be positionally a good defenseman, and a much better, even a two-way defenseman. He contributes a little bit offensively. Like, it's a huge upswing from what you saw last year. I know there are still some very down games and still some very noticeable mistakes where you're like, eek, let's get number 4 off the ice. But I gotta say, I gotta hand it to John Merrill. I think he's really stepped his game up. And even when he was kind of in and out of the lineup when defense was fully healthy, now it's going to be another question when Jonas Brodin comes back, which sounds like it could be as early as this week, potentially, as he's day-to-day with that lower body injury, but has been skating with the team. I think John Merrill has earned himself the right to be in the lineup as of right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, recency bias, huge save in the crease, about to go over the goal line last night. That was awesome.
So good. We love some good things happening for the good people. And it was, that game, if Merrill doesn't get in there, that's a 2-0 game. I don't know that Minnesota has it in them to climb back, right? Necessarily, maybe a little bit, but it would have been a totally different game. Interesting to think. I had something else I was going to say about the defense. David Urich. That's what I want to talk. Let's talk about David Urich. You know why? Because Minnesota Wild fans are getting pissed off that they do not have a David Urich in the lineup. You know who else is getting pissed off? I think David Urich looks very salty on the ice. Not a whole lot of smiles for him. It's ironic that Minnesota is doing exactly what we dogged on Columbus for doing, right? Columbus didn't play him. Columbus just had him sitting. You're doing the same thing. And right now, with a team that could use an offensive joust, put David Urich in the lineup. Now, yes, that goes back to the question I just had. Who do you take out? Do you take out John Merrill? Do you take out Zach Bogosian? Do you take out Declan Chisholm, right? Like, I think Merrill or Bogosian are your odd men out, but I would like to see David Urich in the lineup, or figure out a way to put him back down in Iowa, I guess. I think that's the most puzzling thing, because we know the offensive upside. Just try it out. Just see it. I think it's a perfect time to do it. Go 11-7, maybe, right? Because I don't mind if you sit any of those bottom 6 forwards. I don't mind. Have Trennian up in the box. I don't mind, Kirsten.
That's always a possibility. It doesn't make sense either, especially when you've kind of been down and out. Going back to like the St. Louis game, that was a terrible game. So it's like, why wouldn't you have tried it just to see how it would have worked? It couldn't have hurt. It could have only helped.
Yeah, I rolling with the same line doesn't always make sense when you're not getting what you need, right? Like, and I have seen, I know,
that.
What's up?
They've been doing a lot of that.
Yeah, which makes my job easier as a line heathen advocate. Like, I can easily give you the lines because I have them at the ready. But my bigger question is you need to do something to get the offense going, right? And now we might see changes. We don't know what Marcus Foligno's injury is exactly. Brendan Gaunt stepping in, Marcus Foligno a late scratch ahead of the game against the Kings on Monday with an upper body or lower body. I can't quite remember. A body.
I thought it was
issue.
announced, not by beat writers.
It was
but,
announced. I just
CBS
don't remember.
Sports was, from what I had heard rumblings, and I asked for official sources and confirmation, like CBS Sports or whoever it was saying he needs core surgery, season ending.
Wait, excuse me?
I thought that's what somebody said last night at the game. And I was like, where did you hear that? I didn't hear anything. I didn't see any local reports on that, but somebody said CBS Sports said it. So if that's wrong, don't come at me, but I had heard.
Let's find out before everybody on Reddit is reading into what we said.
I'm telling you what news was given to me during the second period of last night's game.
It's an upper body. So we got that. That was I thought it was upper body. And now I saw the reason it was more curious, Foligno did skate. There was an optional skate ahead of the Kings game. There were about 11 guys out there. Marcus Foligno was one of them. I didn't notice anything. Now, again, it was an optional. So they're not doing a heck of a whole lot except doing some circles and twirling around, right? Like, that's fine. He was down and out right away. So it makes me believe now he was going to get treatment because I had actually requested to talk to him, but he was gone. And it obviously something felt right. But now we're going to find out if this is a more...
I don't know. Maybe it's an old thing. I don't know. Again, this was given to me middle of the game.
That's fair.
That's what
we're
he
definitely
had last season. So maybe they saw something old.
I feel like it was possibly an old report because I'm not seeing anything. I certainly didn't hear any rumblings about that. Now, it is concerning because Foligno had that surgery and because he worked so hard to come back from an injury. So if it is at all related to that, that makes me very curious. Is like, okay, we have another player who's going to constantly be hurt because he's older too, right? So I think that's just
because from my understanding, there wasn't a contact situation that also happened.
The only thing that I can think of is the game against St. Louis. He was throwing his body around. Like I think he had a team high like 5 or 6 hits that night. So the only thing I was thinking was maybe it was just a little bit of like soreness. I don't want to say soreness because that makes it sound like he was soft and sitting out for no real good reason, right? But I think maybe there was some heavy bruising because he was absolutely crushing people trying to get something going. But I don't have any more information, unfortunately. I did ask John Hines post-game if there was any update, and we got nothing. But I do think that maybe the report that you had heard is an old one that somebody read. Is just that's from what I'm finding. So
it was
far.
A report from a fan.
Yeah,
thought
fans,
when I
guys,
asked
come
him
on.
to double check, it was reliable that he went back and checked because I was like, I haven't heard anything.
I mean, if you type in Marcus Foligno injury, it just has the upper body. Now, again, and not to say that it's not. You said CBS Sports, right? He said.
I don't know. That's what he said last night. It's all the old stuff I've seen, so we don't need to spend too much more time delving in.
Sometimes I like to just do our due diligence. I don't see it. I'm not going. I refuse. How about this? I just refuse to believe it because I just do. I don't know. I gotta see the positivity. There was somewhere I was going with this. Well, with Marcus Foligno out, Brendan Gaunt obviously gets an opportunity. Meh. I don't really care for that. I do have to take a look, and Kirsten, I'm so bad at this, and one day I'm going to be good at it, and you're going to be good at it, and we're going to know the things about money. Because there's a reason I believe they can't recall Liam Ogren at this point, because you could certainly use a Liam Ogren, I think, but I have to imagine it's a salary cap situation. Right?
All the more reason to have put at least one player on LTIR.
Do you have a preference onto who it would have been? Like, if I were to say, like I've told you, I've continued to hear that X injury is more substantial than they want you to believe. And again, the update as of Monday was both players are progressing off the ice. Off the ice means they ain't getting close to being on that returned roster because you need to get a couple practices in. The team's not practicing as frequently because they're playing every other night. That runway for a regular season return is quickly shortening. But do you have a preference, Kirsten, as to which player it was? Did you want to see both of it? I mean, what would be your opinion there?
I mean, I'm shocked they didn't put Eck on LTIR because from, again, rumblings I had heard, it was pretty damn near sure it was going to be season ending. Broken bones, hard cast.
Yeah.
You don't really just have that healed up in a month and a half.
Right. No, I think I would have preferred Eck, especially again, and I think we touched on it last week. I do wonder if part of keeping Kaprizov off is because Kaprizov, rightfully so, because he's a competitor, was like, no, I don't want you guys to tell me I can't come back in the regular season. I've missed too much time. I'm coming back in the regular season. And I love that attitude. And I love the go get itness, the fire in his belly, if you will. I just feel like that's maybe a large reason.
But at the end of the day, does he even get that kind of say with the medical staff or management to say, don't put me on LTIR? I don't, as much as we love him and as much power as he does hold, I don't think he holds that much power.
I mean, I think he can tell Bill, because Bill makes that call, right? Based on, yes, of what he's hearing. I think from what I've read and what I've heard, the doctor that operated on Kirill is a very conservative doctor, which is why it's taking so long, right? They're being that cautious. So, because I've seen Kirill, I continue to see him down around in the locker or in the hallway post game, and he looks fine. Like, I mean, he's not limping around, he's not. I think they're just being extra cautious. So to your point, yeah, he can't necessarily tell the doctors he's going to go play, but I do think that he has Bill's ear being like, hey, you're not putting me and telling me I'm not coming back when I want to come back. Possibly.
I don't know. I don't necessarily, I guess, agree with that perspective.
I know. I don't know. Because otherwise it makes no sense. As you said, it makes no sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Oh, boy. It just makes no sense. If you're Kirill Kaprizov watching the way that this team is performing right now on the ice, how do you feel?
Incredibly frustrated.
Yeah.
And it makes you question probably the legitness.
Right? Like, that's like a big thing. Let's circle back on that now. The beginning of the year, I hate to go back to it, but it was such a fun time. Remember that? I remember those days so fondly when the Minnesota Wild was top of the league and you're like, holy cow, what is happening? This is incredible. Those days are long gone now. They're but a distant memory. However, that team showed Kirill that, okay, we're good. Surprise, like we're built pretty solidly. We've got Matt Baldi, who was doing very well. You've got Marco Rossi, who continued to grow. Kirill obviously doing his part, but I'm sure from Kirill's perspective, he's looking around and he's like, okay, we got this. We got money during free agency. We've got Danelia coming over. We've got Zebuyam to bolster the back end. We're going to be pretty good. And now it's like he's gone and he's seen no goals being scored at all. He's back to probably feeling like that savior, which again, I don't think he necessarily shies away from, but God, that's got to be exhausting to think that, okay, again, I'm the only one who can get this done on the team. And not to say that he's saying that in like a pompous way, but that's got to be just a very like hang my head down. Oh my gosh, is this team real or is it not?
Yeah, I can only imagine you feel that kind of frustration. Like there should have been a Matt Baldi who was able to produce offense and score goals with him out, and we just have not seen that.
We put out the ABB for Baldi last week, and it continues to be. We've seen sightings of him. I will say this past 2 or 3 games, he looked better, and he is just a little snake bitten. I'm sure part of that's gripping the stick tight. He scores in the shootout. He gets an assist in the victory against the Kings, so that's all fine and well. But what is it about Baldi's game that has changed so much, do you think? Again, 11 games without a goal. But even that, I feel like his shot decisions aren't there. Now, I think offensively as a whole, Minnesota's really struggling to get the right shots on, because you're looking at them, they're going like 100 feet wide, if not straight into the goalie, if not straight into a defenseman. Like, they're being kept to the perimeter, which is hard, right? And they're not getting the bodies, which I need to see Matt Boldy do more. But what do you think he needs to do in order to get this monkey off his back? Because we've seen him be a very elite goal scorer, right? I think it wasn't a surprise when he was being talked about so highly. I mean, he played well enough to make the Four Nations team, because if we recall, he was not a shoo-in for that squad, right? Like, he was not a lock. Matt Boldy earned that spot because he played so well. How do we get that back?
Honestly, probably just an off-season reset. I feel like it's just a mental component at this point, because I don't know what else it could be. Like, he's just gotten, I think, into his own head too much at this point.
Yeah. I mean, and I had to kind of chuckle. John Hines was like, oh, no, but Boldy's still being consistent. He's doing it. I'm like, no, he's the definition of inconsistency, in my opinion. And I just don't know. Marco Rossi, how do you feel about his play? I feel like there's been so much hype on like Matt Boldy struggling, but Marco's been, let's just take
he's been quieter, but he's not had nearly as long of a drought as Matt Boldy, to where I'm like, Marco Rossi is thrown under the bus.
I mean, Rossi has not scored a goal himself. And again, it's a collective offensive problem. Rossi has not scored since February 25th, which I believe is about the same time that Boldy has done anything. So, you know, we're harping on number 12. Well, 23, again, it's just a collective offensive problem, it appears.
I don't know. I feel like I've just seen more Marco Rossi getting in.
Maybe that's right. Like,
as opposed to Boldy.
You're right. Like, he's doing more positive things. It's not, and maybe
like he's helping set up plays, actually, like in the action, picking up assists. Whereas, like, when was it? Was it St. Louis, or was it last night? Matt Boldy got an assist after like a 9-game point drought.
Yeah, last night he got the primary on that power play goal. No, I think you're right. I think Rossi is just more involved, and I think that's, again, I want to see Matt Boldy get into the dirty areas. I want to see him crash the net, and as a whole, I want to see the Wild offense do more of that. But I think that's why we're noticing Marco Rossi, or you don't harp on that, because he seems to still be doing that. You know what I mean? Like, he's still in there. He still has some of that net front presence. He's still mucking it up a little bit. So I think that's why it's easy to overlook the lack of point production from Rossi. That being said, and I know we've talked about it, and Kirsten, I know kind of the side that you're on as far as this, is Marco Rossi re-signing a big priority now, knowing that he has continued to show his value?
My answer is yes.
Please talk amongst yourselves while I have a cough attack for a moment.
Have a sip of water. I mean, you talk about young centers. Who else do we have? We have Joel Eriksson-Ek. Outside of Joel Eriksson-Ek, Marco Rossi, who else do we have? We have Ryan Hartman. Not in love with that. I don't know. You need Marco Rossi on your team.
I'm starting to come around to that idea more. Like, I'm like, you know what? Maybe you could get him. His price is going to be a bit more expensive than initially anticipated, I have to imagine. Again, pardon me. This happened last night in the post-game presser with John Hines, and I was just hoping that people would stop asking questions, because otherwise I was going to have a complete coughing meltdown during the presser, and it would have been so bad. But I didn't. I survived. We're going to survive. We're going to thrive right now as well. But I'm coming around to the idea of, okay, let's give him, I don't know, what do you look at, $5 million for like a 3-year bridge deal?
Probably in that range. And I think he's earned it. And I think you should be willing to pay that.
Yeah.
Like, especially after getting rid of a Marat. Like, you bolster up your centers so much about how Minnesota needs them so much. You can't just trade them away for what?
Yeah. And you don't want to, I mean, do you let him walk? Do you think there's
no?
Do you think there's much clamor for a Marco Rossi there? Yeah,
there's teams that would be interested.
He'd find a home.
I mean, it wasn't even what was it, like last season? Name mixed around for the Calder race. Like,
yeah,
there's no reason to be sleeping on this man. Like, he's talented. He has earned a contract here in Minnesota.
I think sometimes I hit the snooze on him, a little bit, just like, how many times do you hit the snooze in the morning?
A lot.
Same. This morning I hit it quite a few times, but I made it to the gym. We did it. We did the damn thing. Got up. We went. We thrived. It was nice. Yeah, that's really all we got for you guys this week. It's a nice short episode. It's a good one. Minnesota Wild, speaking of snoozing and sleeping, how excited are you for an 8:52 puck drop on Wednesday?
I don't know why we allow that in Minnesota.
Why are we flexing? Why don't we flex this game out? If I were ESPN, I'd be like, nah, never mind. We're good. Like, 8:52 playoff game. I can navigate that, right? Because it's a playoff atmosphere. The vibes are high. The energy's high. An 8:52 Wednesday night game against the Seattle Kraken does little to nothing for me.
I am just so excited. Can't wait.
If you can't tell, Kirsten's living her best life right now. She's just...
I need a break.
Day by
Y'all,
day.
I need a break.
I know. The end is near. The end is nigh. Is that the right term? Nigh?
I don't think
the end
so.
is nigh. I don't think so either. But come see our smiling faces when the Wild leave, but we're still working. Next Monday at Tom Reed's, courtesy of our friends at Grain Belt. That will be our next Beauties Live 6 p.m. show, 7 p.m. puck drop. We'll have some giveaways, trivia, all that good stuff, plus beer specials, food specials, everything you know and love about Tom Reed's. Kirsten, I do have to say shout out to everybody who found themselves at Tom Reed's and sent the pictures of our little coasters. It does really excite me. If you guys are ever at TRs just on a whim, there are Bardown Beauties coasters there for you to use. So very proud of that. Very excited. And yeah, that's going to do it. Again, shout out to Talk North, shout out to Grain Belt, and shout out to our friends out at SotaStick. The Minnesota Wild continue the playoff push. And Kirsten and I continue to be tired and exhausted and living at a hockey rink. But we love what we do. So, here. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next week. Bye.